No Falling on Cedars, a great book discussion. We're gathered here on this wintry Granite State evening. Hopefully this is the last one for a while. And it's been a while since we've been together, so we have a lot to talk about, I think. And there is a paper that's up. We'll set aside some time at the end of the class to discuss that. People who want to participate via Twitter, our Twitter handle is GapGreatBooks, all one word, GapGreatBooks on Twitter, and our email address is gapgreatbooks, all one word, at sau19.com. Okay, so that's it. And by the way, we're getting great feedback from folks who are in the class, who are watching at home, and if you have any observations or recommendations, things that you're noticing, please pass those along. They've been very helpful and helping us tweak this as we go along. All right, so let's go to the book, and what we had about seven or so chapters. A lot to talk about. I have questions, the baseline questions, but maybe folks have something that they noticed, observations, questions about the reading that we read. And could be specific, could be general. Are we liking the book more? We are. Okay. How about anyone not liking? Right?
Sometimes without in-depth thing of describing, like, when it's snowing or the weather.
Good catch. There is a lot of detail. Notice the weather, the snow in particular. Notice a lot of references to Cedars. And then the detail when they're pulling up that, you could call that a mussel, not a mussel, a clam. The detail that goes into that. Yeah, there is a lot of detail, and I think, especially having read the book myself, I know I'm picking up on a lot of features, so I don't want to do it. The detail does matter. So, anything else? Any other observations? Go right to the question. And actually, the first question that we had for the chapter 5 questions was about 1954. Anybody know anything by chance, maybe you researched it, about 1954, the 50s in general? What, you get any sense of the time period of this book? So we've gotten a couple details about something big that happened around the time of this book, closer to them than it is to us now. What's the thing that affected a lot of their lives? The war. Okay? So that's something that seems to be, now, which war are we talking about? If this book is set in 1954, it happened after World War II, okay? Talk about World War II. That happened too long ago. I mean, from 1940 after that, so probably we're doing it now. It's early 2000s. So it wasn't that long. Okay. So, World War II. What are some big things that happened in World War II that changed the world? Okay, the fall of Nazi Germany. And what was one of the things that happened when the public Nazis? The Holocaust, okay? One of the most horrific things to happen in the history of the world, and it was a singling out of a certain group of people. Okay, so that was it. What else was a big thing that happened? Actually, it happened twice. That changed the way, the bomb, okay? So, you are living in a world where that kind of thing is new. You have bombs that can kill thousands of people at once, okay? And armies are capable of doing things like enforcing things like the Holocaust. How might people in the world nervous and scared? Nervous and scared. Okay? Excellent. Nervous and scared. So that's one thing. That's the kind of environment we're in. Okay? Really good. And also, I looked this up and I did not know this, but apparently in Congress, 5 Congress were shot by it isn't, but they wanted the Puerto Rican nationals still around today still wanted to separate from the United States completely. So there was this movement and they shot 5 times. Imagine, I didn't know that. Okay? So that happened, and that's something I didn't know. But there's something else happening now. Bird, does that sound familiar? Okay. Remember around what it was about? Yeah, it was about integration. And so you got to think about that. Parents live, your great-grandparents live, this is how life is. And now this big change comes along saying, this is how our schools are going to be run. Now these people that you don't normally interact with are going to be in your schools, whether you like it or not, okay? Now, I'm not right at this moment putting a judgment on that, but I'm saying, how do you think people are feeling about stuff like that? Yeah, angry, scared, okay? So I think there is a lot of that kind of going around at this time. Although you could even say, how different is that from now? Are people scared about some things in the world now? And are people scared about certain people who look different from different countries and have maybe a different religious perspective, right? There's a lot of fear around that. And in some instances, justifiably so, right? We were upset with the Japanese because of what was the big thing that got us upset with Pearl Harbor, okay? So, and there were other things that happened over in Japan, the rape of Nanking, if you know anything about that, some pretty bad stuff, okay, that happened. So we had reason to be fearful. How we dealt with that, well, we can talk about that. But now, the things we have going on in the world now, do we have reason to be fearful? There are some things that aren't going on, but we've got to be able to separate that out, which is pretty complicated. All right, so
Horace Whaley. Do you remember who Horace Whaley is? I read a book over vacation called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. The author's name escapes me at the moment, but it's about a true story about a woman who got a job in a crematorium. Do you know what a crematorium is? Yeah. It's where you put the bodies when people want to be cremated, and what that's like to have a job like that. Old people, young people, babies, body parts. People donate their body to science, and when they're done with it, like they'd go to these schools and get like the arms and put them into the crematorium, because you don't just human bodies in the trash. Even a finger, you can't do that. Okay, so what was interesting about that was how this woman became very, in a cool way, very separated from death. She would describe what she was seeing in a very kind of observational way. She got used to it. So going back to, this all ties together, trust me, Horace Whaley. Didn't remember him now? Who Horace is? He's in chapter 5. Yes, doing the autopsy. Remember that section? Was that a little creepy or what? It's just looking at the body, walking around, making the foam come out of his mouth. Yeah, you thought detail made it a lot more dark, but interesting at the same time. Did you see how he was talking about how he didn't think people had drowned, that they had gotten blood poisoning before they drowned because the salt got into their bloodstream? Do you remember that part? It's pretty interesting. So they're getting fixated around when the person died. Did it happen before he got hit in the head? Did it happen after he got hit in the head? Did he fall into something, or did something hit him? So the question that was in the handout is, how do his feelings about the Japanese factor into his thinking? And I found that was a trickier question than I think at first. When he was looking at that body, do you think he had made up his mind about something, or about a certain type of person, or not? Yes. Now, that was interesting. Now, did you feel like that was a racist thing when he was saying it, or was it just like, this is what I've seen? I did too. Because remember, do you remember what he did during the war? Yeah, and he saw some pretty bad stuff. I mean, talk about detail. I mean, finding the bodies with the bones exposed and then still fresh underneath, and so he'd been through a lot. I didn't feel like he had a negative feeling, at least consciously, about the Japanese. But there was a word that he used, and we're seeing a lot in this book, that kind of makes me go, whenever someone uses it, referring to the Japanese. Do you know what that word is? Do the people in town seem to say the Japanese? What do they say when they're referring to those people? Japs. Okay. Do you hear people using that now? I rarely, if ever, do I hear someone. And if someone does use it, it's usually not someone I really am very closely associated with. Okay? So we've cut, at the time, that was a very common term. And you got to think of the anger that still exists. I mean, these are people that you've just gone through a very ugly war with, people who you know have killed your friends, okay, people you had to kill, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. So there is this, I think there's this leftover animosity that becomes racial, even though the people who are living here have nothing to do with it. They're projecting that anger. Just because a person who looked like that fought me, all people who look like that make me angry, kind of thing. Right? So I don't know. I got a feeling that he was fairly even-handed. I feel like he was trying to get the facts. How about you? Did you ever? I did not, and maybe I'm misreading it. Again, it's only the second time I've been through it. But I'm looking at it and I'm saying, I don't think he's trying to skew it. I think he's trying to get to the honest truth. That's just my sense. Okay? Any other things about? Oh, thank you. Right. She said he kept separating himself from personally knowing him. He kept on saying to himself, okay, that's not my friend. That's not my friend. Well, okay, and friend, the word friend, maybe I'm overusing it a little. Do you feel like they weren't buddies? I don't think Carl was a buddy with anybody. Does it seem that way? He's that kind of guy he's got the Keanu Reeves school of emotion, happy, sad, angry, So Carl didn't, but was he always like that? Do you remember that part? I'm kind of skipping ahead though. It was after the war when he came back, this fun-loving guy, this animated guy, that was flat. But he's not the only one who came back that way, as we're seeing. Okay. Thanks for bringing that up. I'd forgotten about that. He kept on having to remind himself. And that was, and again, that shows how professional he's trying to be. So getting back, chapter 6 about Carl and his house. Do you remember his house? There was a brief description of it. It's the question is implying that the house is a reflection of the man, kind of symbolizes him. Was it this beautiful decorative house with beautiful shingles and little ornate drawings on the sides? No? What kind of house was it? Think about the man in the house. What kind of house would you expect? Very plain, very functional. Okay? So he kind of, in everything he did, he seemed to, it was just, I'm going to do the bare bones basics. Remember when he brought his son who had cut his foot to see Horace there, and he's just holding his son as the foot got stitched. And do you remember? That's the second time I read it, it stuck out at me too, the way he paid. Remember he took out a wad of bills and just went, paid it quietly and left. So that's definitely the type of guy Carl is. However, warning, I wouldn't say he's a man without emotion. I'm jumping ahead. I can't help it. All right, I'm trying to hold myself back. There's the question about how art, remember who's art? The sheriff. He has to do something that is very unpleasant. What is that? Well, there's a lot of stuff he does, but at the end of chapter 6. That he has to tell Carl's wife that, and the way the writer builds that up and makes it harder and harder is really, cool from a writing perspective, not cool that I'm like to see that kind of thing happen. But when he pulled up to the house, what happened? Do you remember the first thing that came out? The kid. They were like 4 and 8 or something like that. Okay, and maybe that affects me more so because I have kids that age, and so you're like, oh, that's just not. So now that just makes it. I don't know. For me, that was like, oh no. And then, how do you think the way he handled that, was that the way to do it? Was there a better way that he? I'm not saying I have, because I've never done that. I don't know. Ooh, I love the way you were. He knew his place and he didn't step out of it. He definitely, because he kind of has a relationship with Carl's wife from the church, and he notices how different she looks now as she's taking care of the house as opposed to when she's all dressed up for church and giving out cookies and coffee. And yeah, he really does. That's a great way of phrasing it. This is my role. And then at the end of that chapter, she does what I think is very well written in description of how she kind of sits down and doesn't get it at first. She's like, he can't be dead. He was just here. And so that really, and he steps by her and he says, I just need to make a phone call, and she kind of just moves on. He doesn't hug her. He doesn't get all emotional. It's just very official. So I think that's I like that. That was his place, his role at that time. I think we have a few people in this book who do that. They have a role that they're supposed to fill. That's a good. I like that. All right. All right, chapter 7. We get a little history of the Japanese people on the island. Do you remember how most of them got there initially? Yeah, they jumped ship. I mean, think of how desperate they must have been. You're on a ship and you see land, you jump off because I'm not going back. Okay? And then what you might have remembered is, how long did it take them to get jobs? That's one thing that struck me. Well, I remember reading a lot about like the little details. Exactly, but did it take them long to get jobs? No, I think they got jobs right away. They got, and I think it's described. I'll get my copy out here. Whoops. Oh, I do remember they jumped off the ship and then they quickly got jobs. And I think that struck me along with the names. I don't know about you, I kind of changed. I knew this was not set in 2015, and I know that life was different then. I don't know if any of you have older, much older relatives who might throw around some words that we really don't want to be throwing around these days. Like I've had older members of my family, because they grew up in 40s, 50s, like they say words that you're not supposed to say anymore, right? Ooh, but you can't, that's the time. That was the time, that kind of stuff was part of the culture, and it's not so much anymore, at least publicly. But when I saw this, I saw they're listed by the census taker as Jap number 1, Jap number 2, Jap number 3, Japan Charlie, now there's a name for you, Old Jap Sam, Laughing Jap, Dwarf Jap, Chippy, Boots, and Stumpy. I don't know. That's not very dignified. I don't think I'd want any of those names. Okay, so that's how they're. But they start working right away, and what do they wind up claiming for themselves? That part of the island was called Japtown. Now, the part of the island that was the heart of the town used to be what? The place where everybody worked at first. Where was the place that everybody got a job at first? The mill. Okay? But you can't run a mill without, without workers. But what if you have workers? You still need, what goes into the mill? Wood. What happened with the wood? How long does it take for a tree to grow? You just pop right up as soon as you not chop it down? No? Yeah. So what eventually happened on the island? Yeah. So they cut down all the trees. What did they put in the place of the trees? Now they have these big wide open fields. Strawberries. Okay. So now they start planting strawberries and raspberries. Okay. So that kind of became the thing that the Japanese did. But of course they couldn't own any of the land because there was a law that said if you're a citizen, if you're not a citizen, you can't own land, and if you're Japanese, you can't become a citizen. So yeah, a lot of barriers there. Here's a question that I thought was interesting. Why do you think that the strawberry princess, is it? The strawberry princess. Why does the strawberry princess have to be Japanese? Think about that for a second, because it took me a little bit of time to figure that out. Yeah, cultural, that might be a way to put it. It's a cultural thing. Who goes to this festival? Who goes to the strawberry festival? Do you remember? Kind of a trick question. Just a certain group of people? Everybody. Everybody goes to the strawberry festival. Okay, do we have anything that's the Hillsborough Fair? Is that like the closest thing we have to that around here? I guess. In Massachusetts, they have the Big E. Anyone ever been to that? The Big E? Nobody? Wow. You should go sometime. It's really cool. But it's like the thing that everybody goes to, okay? So it's not like it's just Japanese people, okay? Because they give, like, the state does a proclamation saying these are the best strawberries in the world, or the king, or like you said, king or queen had breakfast the other day with our strawberries, with our proclamation. So everybody shows up. Everybody is apparently pleased with these strawberries and proud of them, but it's only a Japanese girl who is going to be the strawberry princess. Okay, you're putting it so nicely. It's because they're the only ones who picked them. So maybe there might be some folks who weren't Japanese who were picking strawberries. Let's put it this way. Do you think there might be some people in San Pedro who don't want their daughter to be the strawberry princess? Absolutely. Why? Japanese, right. Right. See what I mean? It's like, that's something Japanese people are, not us. It's kind of, if you think of a profession that would be associated with a certain race, and you're saying, well, yes, but it would kind of like be maybe in the South during slavery, something associated with cotton or something, or like, well, that's not, my daughter doesn't pick cotton. Those people pick cotton, and that she's, right. Still, yeah, right. We're in the middle of a lot of things going on. Very good point. Civil rights with African Americans. We've just come out of a war, and the people are still throwing. I mean, I remember as a kid older people using the word Japs. I don't know if that's something you guys have been exposed to. So there's a lot of things going on here, and so that's probably the main reason. Although they're not going to come right out and say that. Okay, the question goes right into the internment. How many of you did not know about the internment before you came to high school? Japanese internment. Yes. Was that news to you? Is that something? Right before high school? Didn't know? Okay. Do you remember? I think a lot of people are surprised to learn about it because it just, for whatever reason, it's not given as much notice as the Holocaust is. Most people are exposed to that pretty quickly, know a lot about it, okay? Japanese internment, I don't know if there's a guy who used to be on Star Trek of all shows. His name's George Takei, and he was recently in a play about the internment. He was Mr. Sulu. Okay. But he recently, I think the name of it, I'm going to get this wrong, I think it might have been Anthem, I'm not exactly sure, but trying to raise awareness, because what happened is they said, look, all you Japanese people, Japanese descent, you're going to be in these camps now. I mean, think about it. Yeah, it almost un-American, or is un-American, I would say. I mean, but, and I am not excusing it, okay? I am not excusing it. I'm just trying to understand it. Could you imagine if, let's say, we had another big terrorist attack like we did with 9/11, maybe worse? Can you see some people maybe saying, hey, we need to lock up this group of people, or we got to do something about this group of people? Can you imagine people? I can imagine that. I've heard, people, but remember what our whole discussion started with was fear. Fear makes people do crazy things, okay? When you're scared, you're not thinking about, oh, is this morally right? You're scared. And if you're scared for your wife, your husband, your children, what are you going to do to protect them? Anything, right? You don't care about right or wrong at that moment. So that's how a lot of this stuff, I think, gets started, is fear. Okay, people are scared. Now, when that happened, though, when the notice came through, was everybody in town happy about it? Was everybody saying, yeah, get those people out of here? Or were there some people who thought it was wrong? Right. Well, that came up later in the reading a little bit about picking up the strawberries. But there were some people who said that's not right. Okay? Kind of like during the era with African Americans, there are a lot of people who said that's not right, but what did they do about it? No, they didn't do very much. Okay, so, but there was some grumbling about it, and that's, well, I'm getting ahead of myself again, but it had to do with that land deal that they set up. Okay. Hatsu, do you remember her lessons with Miss Shigemura? What those lessons were for? Dance? What kind of dance? Just boogie boogie? I don't know if that's a dance, actually. Yes, Japanese dance. What other Japanese, how to conduct yourself, behavior, what kind of man was she expected to date and marry? Japanese. Okay. I don't know if any of you grew up in a family that has strong ethnic ties to where, like I grew up in a family that was proudly Irish mostly growing up. So there was a lot of talk about Irish. So I don't know if you grew up in a family. No? A lot of ethnic pride, Italian, Polish. No? New Jersey. Yeah. Yeah. So they're very, it's very important to them to keep, so Mrs. Shigemura is teaching her how to behave like a proper Japanese girl and how this is what you're going to do, and you're going to dance this way, and you're going to do all these things. You're going to act a certain way. But in her heart, how is she feeling? Is she really happy with it? No. Okay. But Hatsu's pretty independent, don't you think? Smart, independent. All right, I think we could start talking about Hatsu and Ishmael. Hatsu, now, remember last class we talked about that weird moment, and one of you, who was it? One of you said there's something going on. When he said, hey, he wanted to talk to her, and you said as a reporter, that was awfully familiar. And she's like, not here, not now. That's weird. Well, yeah, I can understand a reporter wanting to talk to the wife of somebody who's accused of murder, but he's not talking to her that way. It's kind of like, Hatsu. So now we learn, what do we learn? Yeah, friends. Yeah, I'll say friends. Yeah, friend. There's a very innocent relationship that develops between them because how does that relationship grow? Like, where does it? Let me word it this way: where does it start? Like, are they adults? Are they teenagers? Like, where are they when they first meet and start interacting? Very young, so it's very innocent. And if you remember, there's a time when, and I don't know if you've ever liked somebody this way, but like all of a sudden, somebody you've always been around, you just start to notice them differently. Even though you've known them for a long time, all of a sudden it's like, there's something, he starts to feel something, but he doesn't know what it is. He can't even put it into words. And he's struggling with that. And that's when then he kisses her, and then things get weird. That's pretty common, right? The kiss, and then things get weird from there. Okay? Why, from having read what you read, why do you think it gets weird? Let's do with that. They're not supposed to be together, and I think that's Hatsu's inner struggle, especially because I don't think Ishmael was brought up that way, but she knew for sure that she's not supposed to be doing that. Okay, that there'd be a problem. But eventually, things come around, and they get back together, and, well, then they become closer, shall we say. Well, can I talk to you about that a little bit, actually? Because I've always kind of struggled with this, and I want your honest opinion. I've always struggled with, let's just be honest, there are a couple scenes here that are a little descriptive in the book, right? I can assure you it doesn't get much more graphic than that, but it's not like crazy, but it's descriptive. And I have the same issue that I have with books and with movies with this kind of thing. I always wonder to myself, do we really need to know that? Is that necessary? And I remember a good friend of mine who studied film and was a film fanatic, brilliant guy, and he went on to actually produce movies in Hollywood, said that it was important. And I argued I wasn't sure. Why do we have to see that? Or why do we have to know that? Can't we just know that it happened? I don't know. What are your thoughts about that kind of thing? When you were reading it, were you uncomfortable? Did it change anything? Did you think this shouldn't be here, or this is showing how natural the relationship was? Because it's not like gory, awful. It's just.
No, I agree with you.
What do you think?
I think it's kind of implied, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have like put that together in your head. I didn't really need like the whole detail.
Okay. So it's implied you didn't need to know that kind of thing. Maybe here from a woman's perspective, too? Like, does that, because there's a different thing going on mentally with her, because she obviously winds up with, she's with two men in her life, and she's describing that early stages of the relationship. Is there anything like, do you get a feeling of like skeeviness, that it's impure, that it's like, ugh? Do you get that feeling from this? I didn't get that feeling. I thought, I mean, it was part of, and definitely there's an innocence about it, but I just was wondering, so anyone else, your thoughts when you were reading it? Comfortable, uncomfortable? If you're uncomfortable, that's fine. That's part of the discussion. No? Nothing? Oh, interesting. Very good, mature reading there. Like maybe this is relevant to later on in the book. I'm going to be honest, I'm 59 though, and I've read a few books, just a few. And I'm going to be honest with you, I get a little, ooh, you know, I get a little, why did they do that? Why did they put that? I don't know. That might be my own issue. I don't know. So you're saying that anyone else have the same reaction as I did, or a different reaction? Like it's just part of. Okay. Not graphic, showing intimacy. I like that. Yeah, it wasn't. It was very simple, and it's very fast. It's not like you're going 8 pages of this, okay? You know, can we move on? No, it's very quick, but I'm always interested, especially when studies writing and literature and music and all those, like why someone put something in, because as you said, it's not an accident. The author doesn't say like, oh, I've got a few minutes here, I'll throw this in. Okay? So I think it is important, and I think we can jump ahead because we've got to be a little more careful with time here. But then there's the issue with her husband where she lies to him, right? Remember that? I think that was a good move, by the way. I do. And that, like you're saying, I think that's, oh, see, everything ties together. I love it. The lie that she tells him, which is like, no, you're the first man I've ever kissed, or et cetera, is going to matter later as well. And that's something we'll be able to talk about. But both times with those two intimate scenes, I just was wondering, okay, maybe there's a different perspective, a woman's perspective here to look at, like what this means, as opposed to me just being an uptight older guy, being like, oh, I don't know. So, all right. Here's the hollow cedar symbolize. Anything you think the separate piece? A separate piece. No. Okay. What, say I might have just given the hint to the answer here, though. What do you think the hollow cedar tree symbolizes? It's actually pretty simple. You don't need to overthink it. What are they doing when they go there? Why do they go there? So they can be together. What's going on in the world around them outside of that tree? We've talked about it, 1954. What's going on? Yeah, all of this bad stuff is going on, but inside that tree, what's happening? What have they made? A safe place. It's like their own safe, pure, happy world where they just want to be together. So I think it kind of symbolizes a separate world. All right, I wanted to spend more time on this person, but I'm going to have to move quickly. Etta Hine. I'm going to say Etta Hine. How about old Etta? What do you think, folks? Well, you're making a face. What do you think? Etta Hine. Yeah, pretty racist, right? Wow. How about that marriage? Happy marriage? She, Etta, and her husband? No. In fact, he's pretty blunt about it, and I think is it in that. I want to make sure I get the right chapter. Do you remember what her husband says to her at a certain point when the news arrives about the internment and that they have to leave? What's her reaction? How does she react to hearing that these people, these hardworking people who are their neighbors and friends, apparently one of them was friends with Carl, right? Fishing pole. How does she react? Is she sad? Does she feel bad for them? Remember what she's talking about, what they're probably going to do with their property? Because how much time are they given out of there? Do you remember? How much time do they have to prepare before they have to move? Anyone? No? No? Does the number 8 ring a bell? Number 8? 8 days. You have 8 days, and I want you and your family are moving out. 8 days. What are you going to do? Imagine somebody just shows up and tells you that. What'd you do with all your stuff? What'd you do with your TV, your computer, your beds, your sofa, your bureaus, your kitchen appliances? What are you going to wind up doing? You had 8 days. Okay, right. You might wind up leaving a lot of it there. What you might try to do in those 8 days is do what? And that's what Etta kind of refers to. Maybe. That might work. They didn't have Craigslist back then, but you think they might try to do that. Sell it. But guess what's sad and terrible? You've got all this nice stuff, and you're selling it. But I know that you have to leave in 8 days. Well, or I'll just wait till like you're desperate and you're like, okay, $5 for the TV, and so Ed is kind of almost happy about that. And then when her husband dies, I think that all that other stuff starts to come out. Her real feelings about race and in the Japanese people in particular, but she's also got a reason why she's angry with the Japanese, which I'm not saying is an excuse, but it's a reason. What is probably one of the most important things to a mom? It's kind of the answer's in the question, I think. What's the most important thing to a mom? Their kids. Where's her son? Yeah. Yeah, my son's fighting those people. That's, you know. So that's her attitude. I'm not doing any favors. No. Okay. All right. So we've covered a lot of ground. We did not get up through chapters 11 and 12. So we'll have to refer back to those next week. And what we can do is also discuss the paper in a few minutes. But any more comments, observations, or questions? Do people feel like you know what is happening, what the author is trying to do as far as setting up a theme? We've got all kinds of things going on. We've got racial issues. We've got relationship issues. We've got economic issues. We've all kinds of things. So a lot to talk about. All right, so we're going to say goodbye to our friends on television, and then we'll talk for a few minutes about our paper. So good night from Gap Great Books.